A brother told me, he said, all the answers are there for you for growth and for change. If you want them, they're right there. You just have to change your lens.
Welcome to Living Once Twice, a lifestyle design and personal adventure podcast. My name is Justin. Come with me as I'm here to help you chart your course for creating the fulfilling life you desire. Join me as every Wednesday we'll dive into the inspiring guest stories, remarkable science, and useful strategies to help you create the momentum you need to take action towards designing your dream life. Remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Greetings, all, and welcome to Living Once Twice. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. I'm very excited to bring on today's guest, Paul Araya. Paul is an entrepreneur, fitness coach, EMT, community leader, soon to be firefighter, and creator of ATeam Fitness, which is a fitness and life coaching organization that promotes community and incorporating wellness into your everyday life as a way of achieving your full potential and live a life with passion and purpose. Paul, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, brother. Thank you for having me on this evening, man.
Hey, I'm excited to have you on. And before we dive into your story and the great insight that you have to share with our listeners, got to give the folks context. I met Paul back in fall 2020 as a part of Nia Originals Restoring the King platform.
Right.
And then we were speaker on Denzel Herrera Davis's Create the Space platform. And Denzel was a guest last season in episode 25. Just been staying in tune and inspired by the work Paul is doing. So when it came time for a new season, I was like, King, I got to have you on here and be beyond excited for the conversation today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As am I, man. The night we met, or the night we had that podcast with the Create the Space, man, it forced me to dig deeper on me, man. Honestly, the things that you brought up, the things that we learned over that 6-week class, it just came into a full circle, man. And the work is being done daily.
Yeah, man, it was special, transformative, and yeah, I was just watching that over the weekend just to kind of relive it. It was just there
Yeah.
was a special moment. We're totally going to dive into that, and I also
Oh
got
yeah.
to let folks know because later on you'll get to share your IG, but I also got to let people know that Paul is a low key IG DJ. If you ever go onto his stories, if you check out the music and the tunes, yo, I be Shazamming, man, your hits. I was like, yo, but that's for another day. So keep the tunes coming, Paul.
Oh
I
man.
gotta give you props on that, DJ. For real. For real. So,
Straight
but
up,
yo,
man.
yeah.
It's a
So
soundtrack to
Paul,
life, man. Soundtrack to life.
loving it. So listen, you got a lot of insight to share with our listeners, especially regarding a topic that I think many people can resonate with, and that is the truth about change and how we can create and sustain change when it comes to creating that lasting transformation in our lives. But before we dive into that, I read a little bit of your impressive bio. So can you just share more for our audience to letting people know who you are, where you're from, and what's your background?
Sure. I am San Francisco born and raised, a Bay Area native. Pretty much bounced around between San Francisco and the East Bay, rather Oakland and Contra Costa County. A little bit of time in Fairfield. So I'm seasoned to that note. Grew up in a somewhat of a biracial household. My father being his father's side being from South America, and my mother's side being predominantly from the South of the United States, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi areas. And it was interesting growing up because my father, he looked like he was Latino. So him walking me to the store or through the neighborhood, when we grew up in the Fillmore, through the neighborhood, it was always, is that your father? And it was always questions. We was always questioned or, looked at a little bit different. So that kind of taught me how to, first of all, just not really necessarily have any color lines and receive and treat people as their character presents, and also how to deal with a lot of stereotypes, man. So that growing up, that started me off with just an open mind, Again, San Francisco is very diverse, so that was always a thing. I mean, not just with race, but just culture, sexual orientation, financial classes. It was all mixed into where and how I grew up. So I was always able to intermingle with different people, and from that, I learned a lot of different things. Fast forward a little later, I went to school, went to a little bit of college, community college, and I've always been someone who was a helper, helping grandma across the street. I was always the kid in the programs who got helped by the big brothers, and the OGs in the neighborhood always looked out for me, and people just always helped me as a youth. That became something that I did later on, rather it be with community service, and then later on in the medical field, it became something that I thought that would just, I mean, as far as legacy, you spoke on legacy, it just began to become something for me to leave my imprint in the world. You can never really pass on a job. Money comes and goes, but the things that you do, the things that you say, and your actions, they live forever, either through your children or through the community. So started going diving into the medical field, became an EMT. I worked on an ambulance for a little bit, worked in the hospital in the ER currently still. Been doing that for about 11 years, helping and seeing some of the most craziest things I've ever thought I would see. But I figured, growing up in my neighborhood, I'd seen a lot of stuff and did a lot of stuff that almost had my life on the line for free. So I
Mm,
might as
mhm,
well get paid to be in these same type of situations. Again, EMT, that also showed me how our people are so out of touch with their health. A lot of our people are hypertensive, diabetic, stroke prone. They don't eat healthy. They don't think healthy. And a lot of that is based on generational stuff. We never was kind of given those kind of resources.
mhm,
COVID hit, and there was no more gym for me. I had at the time had just had a separation with my wife at the time of 9 years and was with her for 16. So that separation kind of forced me to look at myself, and it also separated me from a crutch that I
mhm,
had
mhm.
for 16 years, right? So I was so young, I pretty much left my parents' house and shacked up with this woman. So I went from one crutch to another, which didn't really allow me to grow as a man. So between that time of 2020, things being shut down, me not being able to kind of go and do the hiding for myself that I probably would have been able to do, I was able to kind of tap into myself. Did the Restoring the Kings, went to therapy, went to a few men's groups, and instead of like being sorry for my situation, I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't like gallivant with women. I decided to start working out and studying my body and studying my nutrition habits. And that started, and I began to get people asking me could they help and could I help them. And that started ATeam Fitness. And ATeam Fitness was just a health and wellness brand. And from there I was like, well, I know how to do all these other things. So I started teaching CPR, got certified for that. I figured, hey, these kids need some resources because most jobs need want somebody to have CPR. So I started doing that, and from that turned into my nonprofit, which was the Ifa Foundation.
Wow,
The Ifa
wow.
Foundation. This is pretty much Ifa is means legacy in Swahili,
Okay.
and pretty much that just is just set up so I can also promote health and wellness, but the wellness piece is resource, right? So I started teaching in the schools out here, kids CPR.
Mhm.
Got funded for that, and then a good friend of mine, Arthur Burton, he's a financial advisor, so we start teaching kids how to balance books and budget from a youth standpoint, and bringing their parents in too, so they can kind of see what your parents spend and what you're costing your parents. And the parents also got some knowledge from that too, because they was like, wow, I didn't even know how to do a budget. So
Wow,
these
Paul.
things, yeah, these things are things that we struggle with as a people.
Mhm.
We spend a lot of money on stupid stuff as a people, and we're not healthy as a people, mentally
Yeah.
and physically.
Yeah.
So
Now we're
again,
gonna touch on all that because I
yeah,
wanna I wanna go back to something you said earlier as you were
yeah,
talking about your story and your journey. And you talked about having to go through the personal transformation experience with restoring the king.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I want to know for you, take me back to that turning point where you realized that it was time for you to start taking responsibility for rewriting your script in life. And you said earlier on, like, hey, you had that crutch, but you knew deep down that you had to do the change, that this was your opportunity, this moment was your time to really invest in yourself and
Yeah.
really push yourself forward. So just take me back to that moment of realizing that turning point for you,
Hmm.
because many people would have continued to leverage that crutch and wouldn't have really have seen that as an opportunity. So yeah, just walk me through that moment.
Like I said, man, I got three children, man. They're teenagers, 17, 15, and 12. And honestly, that was my main motive. But how do they look at dad? What is dad? How is dad gonna bounce back from this loss? And what I tell them is losses are learning lessons, and you can leverage those. So how can I not practice what I preach? So restoring the kings also was a crutch, right? But it was almost like a bridge, rather. Every person that I listened to, I got something from every story. I got something from even before they did meetings before we did our class. A brother told me, he said, all the answers are there for you for growth and for change if you want them. They're right there. You just have to change your lens. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm trying to search. I'm trying. He said, brother, if you buy a Honda today, you jump on the road, you're gonna see that same Honda everywhere on the road. It's not that they just start building Hondas when they bought yours. It's now that you have something, you see something, and now it's in you to see these things. And I forget the actual medical term for that or psychological term for that. But I was like, okay, well, let me manifest and want to be a better man, to be a stronger man, to be a more patient man. And because I did that, because I manifested, because I meditated, because I prayed, and I sought out these answers, Restoring the King came, you came, Denzel came, all these other things came, ATeam Fitness came, like all these
Hmm.
things came because I manifested and I sought out and I changed how I thought. I wasn't
Hmm.
as negative or down on myself. And I changed my diet and I changed who I hung out with. I changed these. You have to want to change, but
Hmm.
in order to change, you have to be accountable for what you are trying to change, which is yourself. You have to be accountable for the things that you did wrong or the wrongs that you're doing.
Wow.
It's about
Yeah.
accountability, man. At the end of the day,
Yeah, no, there's a lot that I want to unpack there. Starting with you talking about having to change your lens, because so much of the change game, it's inside out. And so
hmm
many of us get tripped up by the voices, the doubt creeping in, putting ourselves out there, or even the work ahead to change, because it's so much
wow,
easier to
right,
just stay settled in our ways. So I
right.
would love to hear you talk about, and you were starting to mention, what were some of those mental blocks that you had to, or limiting beliefs that you had to overcome to create that change that you were seeking in your life?
Just to just had to kind of realize like the mental blocks for me. It was just like I always thought I was a certain kind of way. I always thought I was cool, like just smooth. And looking back, 5 years ago, looking back on myself 5 years ago, I would call myself a chump, right? Because I wasn't even in tune with who I really was. I was in tune with who I thought or who I wanted to be, or who I seen somebody who I picked parts of people and tried to make myself
Hmm.
instead of just being comfortable. So that mental block was just like how we had that discussion about intimacy. How intimate am I with myself? Do I even know what I like? Right. And that was a mental block for me to just kind of sit there and say, I am weak sometimes. I am not always strong. I need help sometimes. Or, man, I really wish I can do that. Instead of saying, oh, that ain't no good. That's weak. Or like a being a hater. Instead of being a hater, I can say, wow, that's a really nice pair of shoes. I wish I had some of those. Let me go find out how much these cost and where those are. and I'm gonna
Mhm.
get me some too. Congratulate this man and then be my own man.
Mm.
It's just that part of not being comfortable with myself, all my insecurities, why I was insecure about these things, and then who made me or how did I get to that point. I had to peel my onion back.
Yeah. No, that's real. And here you talk about, Paul, how you had to humble yourself in that process. And so many of us men, we struggle with that. We
Hmm.
struggle with that because we know how our culture is set up. You
Hmm.
can't show weakness.
You can't.
You have to keep up this front. And so hearing you talk about the new beliefs that you had to start, the seeds you had to plant in yourself, the mindset shifts to cultivate and turning yourself, almost giving a death to the old you and
Yeah,
rebirthing the new
yeah,
you. And so how difficult was that for you to push past? Did you have a lot of resistance to doing that change, to finally asking for help, to humbling yourself?
yeah. I did. It was just tough. It almost felt like I had a weight on my neck just to not be able to admit it. Like, oh, I can't admit that I was wrong. I can't admit that this was, or that this person was right about how I treated them, or like just being accountable. It just sucked, man. It
Mhm.
really sucked. It drove me almost into a darker, like a deeper, darker place. But the resources I had through my uncle being heavy into religion, I can always call him and he can give me a scripture. Nia always being there when I needed her. Even though it was her sister who I got a divorce from, she was always there for me and her sister. Thank God I had resources to be this person. And the crazy part was these people have always been there for me. These people have always wanted to see me win, but I neglected to listen to or take the advice from these people for years because again I thought that I knew. I've made it
Mhm.
this far because like you said, our culture is to not show any weakness and to ask for help is almost a sign of weakness or to be vulnerable or to cry or to not push through strong, you're shown as weak. It's either that or a man gives up and he turns to substance abuse, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of our men are either they're very violent, they're on drugs, or they take advantage of the money they have and they don't really show the softer side of themselves.
Mhm.
And it just produces other kids like that, other babies like that.
Yeah, and here you talk about how you almost had to lean into it. And you were mentioning starting a little bit, Paul, of the impact of some of these different tools, whether it was the spiritual tools or the tools like therapy. So we often talk about this on the show. How has therapy been a tool for you creating change in your life? And were there other tools or strategies that you would recommend to folks that are looking to create momentum towards creating change in their life if they're struggling with that?
Yeah, therapy is big for us. I would say for black people in general, because we have the world on our shoulders, right? The world is against us and we have generations of trauma. For me, therapy, it gave me because it's so scientific and it's so layered, just like our brain, that each thing that you unlock, there's another thing to unlock right after, but you have to address that before you can go deeper. And I recommend people get the right therapist because just because somebody went to school doesn't mean they went to the school of hard knocks like you did, and they may not
Mhm.
understand certain things. So you may have to go through several therapists. Initially, I had Nia, and I had other couple people. I had went through Kaiser, some people that I didn't really vibe with, but I had to learn that. And personally, like if you haven't been through not anything to relate, then we can't jive because it's like you telling me something from an outsider's point of view. But if you've been through some stuff and you've coped through it, then we can talk.
Mhm.
So I recommend therapy. What was the second part of that question?
Yeah, yeah. And then were there any other tools that you would recommend
Mm,
to folks struggling with change that could be impactful for helping them if they're looking to overcome something?
for me, a lot of nights to go to sleep, I did listen to the
Mhm.
Bible app. I meditated a lot. I was always
Oh, were there
into
certain verses, by the way, when you talk about the Bible app, were there certain verses that were just imprinted in you or that were really speaking to you?
I was always the type of person that would just open a book and whatever page it go on, it
Yeah.
always seemed to be the thing for me. So I was in the Revelations. Psalms was my thing. It wasn't really verses. I just let it play, man.
Hmm.
God is always on time. And it just happened to always be something that I needed to hear every time. Every time. And I'm not a big religious guy. I'm spiritual on as far as principles and not just being an honest person, not necessarily a big religious guy. If somebody who's going through something, I'll recommend that they definitely either get with a spiritual advisor, they either read on their own or find something that they grew up doing and dive back into that because you can't do a lot of this stuff by yourself. I did no growing by myself, not at all,
Hmm.
not one bit, not one bit. I would have cracked. The amount of stress that I was under, the amount of pressure that I was under, I would have cracked. But if it wasn't for, again, these people have always been in my life who I again, was too hard to listen to, it was too hard to take advice from. If it wasn't for these people being there, and some people don't have resources, but there's resources out there.
Hmm.
There's always a group you have to, like we talked about, searching and changing your lens. Google whatever it is you're going through, there's a group somewhere. You're never alone in the things in the dark places that you're in. There's always, like I was told, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you're young, there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. Like you have so many more years of growth to go through. I'm only 38, man, and I went through this stuff at like 36, 35. And again, I can look back and be like, wow, these resources, therapy, spiritual growth, eating right, meditating, all this stuff works.
Hmm.
All this stuff works.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about for folks because we had an episode about handling the winters in life, the winters
Hmm.
where you're broke, you're brokenhearted, or
Hmm.
you just feel that you're just broken.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that similar to winter, winters pass. It might feel long, it might feel brutal, it might feel bitter, but it will pass. You
We'll
just
pass.
have to keep that in mind, keep working through it. You shared some different things there of the power of community, structure, different support tools in helping you out. And I think all of that is really powerful and impactful. And you also talked about, Paul, the impact of physical fitness in your
Mhm.
journey. And so I would love to pivot and hear you talk more about physical change in the area of fitness, especially because I think for people trying to create change on the inside, sometimes it could be hard because a lot of this stuff, as we've talked about, is deeply rooted into childhood, it's conditioned
Mhm.
into us. But with physical change, it's one of those things we know with patient practice, you could actually see visible results. So I would
Yeah.
love to hear you talk about what has the role of fitness been like in your journey and how has it even aided or sparked your growth and change as well?
Physical fitness to me is everything. I played a little bit of ball in high school and a little bit in junior college, and that was always like a safe place for me. Just working out, camaraderie, things like that. And a good friend of mine, when the first, I would say the first day when I separated, the next day I separated from my ex-wife. A good friend of mine said, "Let's go to the gym." All right. He didn't say, "Let's go to the bar." He didn't say, "Let's go try to get you a new girlfriend." He said, "Let's go to the gym." And we boxed, we lifted weights, we ran, and I felt good coming out of there. And that turned into my routine of when I'm feeling, because everything is energy, right? Even when you're stressed out, that's like bad energy. You can always turn energy into what you need to drive you and make it positive. So I took that whenever I felt stressed, whenever I jumped on a treadmill, I ran. I bought a bicycle. I rode my bike 10, 20 miles, 30 miles, listening to my music or listening to a podcast. It was a healthy escape from the current reality that I was living in. And I always felt like, okay, if I am running from something, I'm not running to something detrimental. I'm
Hmm.
running to, my fitness. And it became where I looked at these monks. I forgot where they were at, but they every year they run like 50 miles a day for like a month or something crazy like that to get closer to God, to get closer to their higher way of thinking. You're gonna be tired, right? Physically, right? But then you tap into your mental strength, right? And you're still tired, but you're pushing yourself through mentally. And then when that fails, if you can tap into your spiritual energy and push through, I mean, these guys is running through the mountains with no shoes on, 50 miles. And they barely, they're not eating protein shakes. They up there eating whatever is up there. So if you can do these type of things, you'll be stronger mentally later. So the fitness, it always gave me the push, man.
Mhm.
It brought me through a lot of dark places.
Yeah. And you being a fitness instructor and knowing that physical fitness, health is always a top item that people during a new year with a fresh new start, they want to focus on, whether it be a resolution.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear you share what are some additional, now everyone might not be able to ready for a 50-mile run like the
Right,
monks,
right,
but
right.
what are some small everyday things that you would say people can do if they're trying to create change in their health and wellness journey? What are some small everyday things that they could do that won't feel overwhelming, but will
Yeah.
help them to start stacking and building up that momentum to change in that area?
Mobility to me is big. So if you get up every day and you stretch, and we're talking just 5 minutes, you can stretch in your bed, you can lean back, you can take your leg, you can reach to your toes, you can do like a seal pose in yoga, you can do a downward dog or two. Get up and stretch every day. Get your body mobile, get your blood flowing. And I mean, what I did, and again, I seen this and read this somewhere else. You get up and stretch. You tell yourself what kind of day you're gonna have and how amazing you're gonna be. Jump in a cold shower, shock your body. Again, tell yourself how amazing you are, how great you're gonna be, and get out there. And you'll feel better. And from that mobility and that stretching, you might want to now do some push-ups or some squats or walking. Get your walk on. Most people don't want to walk nowadays. Get out there and breathe some of that air. Walk, stretch, laugh a lot, drink a lot of water, get you some sun, and then when you're ready, start running or get you a bicycle or swim or do yoga. You want to start slow with your body, but always stay positive with your brain because it's going to be
Mm.
tough. But again, we talked about the winter, the workout, it will be over. Push yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Slow with the body, positive with the brain, and
Mhm.
the aspect of visualization, how important and vital that could be, especially because for so many of us, we think worse outcomes. We got a lot of negative inputs coming in from the TV, and you gave so many easy to do, simple things that people can do right away. The visualization piece, the cold shower, which I'm a huge, huge fan of that.
Mhm.
But I want to take it back because I was doing research before our interview and I found that 46%, and this is going to be talking about career, 46% of employees are largely dissatisfied with their work experience.
Mhm.
And I bring up this stat because we have a large segment of folks, Paul, that are seeking change in the area of career because they lack satisfaction with their career. But when it comes time for the rubber to meet the road, there's a disconnect. And it reminds me of this Tim Ferriss quote, which is most people choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this because you being an entrepreneur and putting yourself out there in different endeavors that involve risk and uncertainty,
Mhm.
why do you feel so many of us, especially when it comes to our career goals, ambitions, we get trapped into this feeling of helplessness or this feeling of we can't create change in that area and we settle, but we want more out of our lives. We want more out of our current career situations.
I think a lot of people are programmed to be content. Being content is almost being safe, and there's fulfillment in safety, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't trust the intimacy. They don't trust themselves. They don't know that who they are or what they really are capable of until you're pushed to that limit, right? I think the reason why I started to do stuff like that was because I was pushed. I worked so hard for something, and then I was told I couldn't do it, or I was let go. from a job. And it was like, what? So I was like, you know what? I will never allow somebody to dictate how I eat or when I
Mm.
can eat. So I started a notary and was getting money on the side at that point. And every job that I've ever had, they gave me a skill set, whether it be customer service, whether it be medical, whether it be anything. So now I have these skill sets. I can get paid to teach these skill sets. Any job that you have, they teach you how to do something. You can do that something on your own. You're really the independent contractor. You're working for your family, but at this job, right? So you can be everywhere as an independent contractor, but just always remember that you're not working for that company. You're working for yourself or for your family. You're loaning your services and skill set. And then you also got to look at it like this: if they're paying me $35 an hour to do something for them, what can I do in my hour for myself? And how much would I get for doing that? Like they're only giving me 35, which means they're making hundreds of dollars on my hour. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to think of it like that. And that'll kind of give you your worth per hour, if anything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm worth more than $35 an hour because that's what they're giving me. I'm worth $300 an hour. And I can make that. So it's all about knowing yourself and being content of your safety of knowing who you are, that you won't fail. And if you fail, oh well, get up and go again because it's not over. So I think a lot of people are just content with just being safe and content with the program of check is coming for sure.
I think that is a part of our conditioning in society, in schooling. We're just kind of
Yeah,
institutionalized and plugged into this, so
right.
we don't really feed or fuel that entrepreneurial spirit. We become more risk averse,
Well, I
and
think
so
I'm sorry
yeah,
to
yeah,
cut you off. I
no, no,
think that like when our parents grew up, it was go to school to get a good job
hmm
versus go to school and be a boss, learn how to be a boss. And that's what I teach my kids. Go get the skill set. If you got to work for somebody, that's cool, but know that you're working for them to learn how to be your own boss.
yeah, that is a wonderful mentality that you're planting in your kids and your children, because then 10 years, 15 years, I mean, 20 years, what that's going to develop into and sprout
Right.
into, and the way that they're going to look at and the perspective they're going to take out into the world is going to be a lot different than their counterparts. And I'm curious, Paul, for you staying on this entrepreneurial topic, how do you continue to stay grounded and rooted? Because you do so many great things for the community. And like, how do you continue to make sure that you're heading in the right direction? What are the habits? What are the practices that continue to keep you grounded as you're continuing to build your entrepreneurial endeavors and all the things that you do?
That's a good question. I actually thought about that the other day. I have some brutally honest friends and children who will check me if I'm not being humble, you know? And I love working with the community. That's the pleasure of mine. So that also keeps me humble and keeps me with the people, keep my vision of just providing legacy for the people of the community and my family. A lot of times you can get caught up in the money or get hungry about the money and just be thirsty about the money, but it's not always about the money. To me, I hustle and work for the freedom of time. So if that's the goal, the money is always going to come because I'm honest. I feel like I'm a good person and I hustle. So it's the hustle for time. It keeps me grounded and humble because once I start trying to do too much, it doesn't work out because that's
Mhm.
not the end goal for me.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to get into talking about a little bit of the self care rituals and practice in a second. But before we get into the each one teach one section, Paul, what really sticks out and is just so powerful about your story is that you've used moments where, quote unquote, we would call like a rock bottom or a season of
Mhm,
of really difficult change, and the way
mhm.
that you've rebound from it has been impressive. And you've carried it through a theme of not letting anything go to waste in terms of getting something out of it. You talked about being let go from a job, transitions from relationships, just things in terms of the journey with therapy. So, is there anything else you would offer to folks out there who are once again in that season, and they're just kind of going through a career setback, a relationship transition, being let go from a job, whatever it might be. What else would you offer to them if they're kind of in that not feeling that, hey, I don't know if I can get through this change, and they're not able to necessarily see what's on the other side?
Hmm.
What would you say to them that, yo, through what you've discovered about yourself, like what advice or inspiration could you offer to them to just have them know that, this season they could take something, they could use it to their advantage?
Like we spoke about therapy. Was big. It's big. Which I mean, really, it boils down to talking to somebody about what you're going through. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but also know that you can't ask marital advice from somebody who's not married. You can't ask financial advice for somebody who's not either had money and is now broke, or has money or has something to do with money. You can't ask people who don't know how to tell you something for some advice. So if somebody's going through something, sometimes you might even have to change your group of confidence or confidants, change your peers, or put yourself in a place where people are also going through what you're going through or can help you what you're going through. People go through a lot, so it's hard for me to say like, my advice is just to be very open about your stuff, because it'll eat you up if you bottle it up, and then you'll be bitter, you'll be depressed, and it'll filter out into whoever you deal with. Everybody, like, the season of change is very uncomfortable. Your growth process is uncomfortable. It's never going to be, oh, well, I transitioned and it was so smooth. Transition is never smooth. Gears on a bicycle is a violent change. It doesn't just smoothly click. It's still a jump from here drastically to there. But it's so many parts in between that gear changing on a bicycle for it to go. It's not just one thing, but it's a violent thing. But it can move smooth if you have the right things in place. I recommend people take advantage of a healthy mindset and a healthy body and a healthy surrounding.
That's all real because you need that. And you mentioned it earlier, you cannot do any of this alone.
Yeah.
This whole world is interdependent, so we need each other through the ups and through the downs. And so being able to lean on community is important. And you also talked about the importance to not lean into those easy, unhealthy vices or distractions and things of that nature, because that's just going to prolong our season of winter, essentially.
Hmm.
So, next up, Paul, is for us to get into our each one, teach one. So, these are rapid fire questions that I
Okay.
ask for the guests. So, the first question that I'm going to have for you is, what's a book or recess, or excuse me, what's a book or a resource that you recommend to everyone?
Just went and grabbed it. So the Four Agreements. It's by Don Miguel Reese. He has another book. I forget what it's called, but this was given to me. Remember, I spoke upon people being resources for me and me not even taking advantage of that. My auntie gave me this book about 7 or 8 years ago, at least. And me moving out my stuff from one place to another, I found this book. And again, like I said, God is good all the time because I needed this book. It's a book that reveals the sources of self limiting beliefs that rob you of joy and create like a needless sufferingness. It tells you what you need to have in order to combat these ideas that society is kind of put in our on our plate. It tells you about just like personal growth, man. It just tells you like what should you tell yourself, how should you think? Because some people
Mhm.
don't know. Again, it was stuff that I've learned through therapy, but this reinforced a lot of it, right? It kind of goes a little bit biblical, but more biblical on just reference. But it just goes in on how to speak integrity into yourself, how to manifest and avoiding using words that speak negatively on yourself. Because you talk about certain things, and again, it's energy. You speak
Mhm.
negative, it's going to bounce off and come right back to you. So I would definitely recommend that book for somebody who's going through it. It's just like a practice guide to personal freedom.
Love that. Love that. Now, that book is powerful. That book is very powerful. I've read it, listened to it on audio, and then there
Hmm.
are some seeds that it does plant in you to be mindful about, like you said, how you speak about yourself, how you speak about others. So the next question, and Paul, this is one I'm very curious about because you do a lot in the world. What self care or spiritual rituals have you found to be impactful in your lifestyle design?
We spoke about me getting up in the morning and stretching. I definitely stretch and I just speak into myself. The cold showers are big. Hot showers at night, cold showers in the morning. You shock your body, especially if you're going to go work out. It opens you up to new life. You know, the body's temperature is always going to be warm anyway. You just shock your body, bring all that goodness into your body, manifest. And then I pray, man. I pray that I make it through the day. I pray that everybody's going to be healthy within the world, within my circle. And I get out there. And as of recently, because where I'm at, I'll get up and run at like 6 o'clock. We running and working out from 6 till about 7:55. And you know, if you have the time before work or whatever, definitely do all these things. But you can do small things throughout the day. Mentally, take 10 or 15 minutes and decompress within the middle of the day. Get the stress off yourself during lunch and just enjoy, life. Tell people that you love them. Say thank you. Smile at people. You know, say hello to people. Hey, how you doing? And keep it pushing because again, that energy you're pushing out is gonna come right back. That's what I do. I try to just be positive. I don't have road rage. You want to cut me off? That's cool. You got to be where you got to be faster than me. Have a good one.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I love how you talk about everything from setting the tone to your day, the energy that you go out into the world, and the last one that you just mentioned too. Of they might speak about this in four agreements, but like you're not worried about what the other person they might have some other situation going on, so you're almost not even
Mm-mm.
letting that disrupt your own inner peace and what you got going on.
You can't,
Because who
man.
knows?
There's a lot of energy vampires out there, and they want to. They especially if you're moving in purpose, they don't know. I mean, they might know, but they're gonna try to take that. So you got to protect your peace. You got to protect your energy. So all the movies, every movie I've ever seen where it was light and dark, good and bad, the blue light versus the red light, it always won. The positivity is always won because it's stronger than negativity. You can't really take a positive to make a negative, but you can make a negative a positive. So it's just about how you redirect stuff, but protect your energy at all costs, if anything.
Facts. Facts over here. Facts over here. So for our next one, Paul, is if you could make a law or a policy that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
Sheesh. Man, a policy would be, and this will start at the grade school level. There would be therapy for children. There would be therapy for children. There would be a class for kids to learn how to express themselves, or there will be therapy, like not school counselors, but actual therapists in the grade school level for these children to express themselves because they have too many outlets to do too much dumb stuff and they don't even know what's going on. They just see it and it's put on their plate at such a young age that they haven't technically been through it, but because they see it 1,000 times, their brain is desensitized to it, and now they've been through it, or they want to go through it, or they want to do it, or whatever it is. As for us, we had to go to an encyclopedia to find, or whatever we had to do. We had to go get it. This stuff is at these kids' fingertips, so they may not be mentally ready for some of this stuff, and they're not going to talk about it unless it's an open forum to talk about it. They may not have that at home. So I think a lot of children, especially now with them being homeschooled for a year, and a lot of like again, I work in the medical field. A lot of these kids have been coming in on 5150s and
Mm.
depressed,
Wow.
and it's a lot of suicide and a lot of things going on because they don't have that outlet. So I would say the policy would be to put some kind of therapy or some mental health classes in the grade school, elementary school level.
No, I love that. I love that because and we even talked about this in our Restoring the King, Create the Space event. There's so many imprints that happen to us that we've never
Mhm.
processed in a healthy way or had help. And like you said, we never had help processing. So we then become teenagers and adults limping through life or acting out in unconscious ways,
Hmm.
these behaviors and things of that nature. So being able to at an earlier age give kids a healthy support system to process things, to heal, to deal with things, to cope, man, it can really be beneficial to them as they go into their adult years. So speaking of school, what is one thing that you did not learn in all of your years of schooling that you believe needs to be taught?
Financial literacy.
Okay.
I want to say we had like a semester as a senior of economics
Hmm.
or economics when we kind of played with the stocks a little bit, but I enjoyed that class, but it was only like a half a semester. Then we had to do politics or something like that. But I really enjoyed that class, and I didn't enjoy much about school at the time. But I feel like if that was a thing continuously, I would be a hell of a lot better with money, credit, and all these things. But I think that should be just how to balance, how to budget, this economics class for at least sixth grade, piece by piece. Just like they didn't have health ed was only a semester,
Hmm.
right? But health ed is something that you really need. You know what I mean? You need that more than you need geometry class, honestly, you know? So make math functional within life, I would say, so you can understand why mathematics and geometry is important. Because if you want to be an architect, or you need that stuff, but it's like, why do I need geometry if I'm not going to do that? Oh, we need it because it is. And okay, well then, if you don't want to do it like this, here, take this class on how to do stocks. I know it's not. If they did it to everybody, it'll mess up the gap that they made for everybody to be broke and not broke. But if I had a school,
Yeah.
that's what we would be learning, man.
Hmm.
We're learning
Yeah,
about
no,
health and money,
that's a popular answer. Like, give us tools that we really
what
need
you really
to
need.
help ourselves sustain ourselves in this world. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
in agriculture, grow some stuff.
Hmm. Right on. All right. So the last one, Paul, is, and this is what I'm asking all guests this season. If there is one thing that you could leave the world, what would you want us to take away from your legacy of how you lived your life?
Just one thing, huh?
You got more, feel free to give it to us, but at
uh,
least give us one.
okay. To leave the world, it would just be I came in trying to leave the world better than what I found it. And that's Paul was accountable in his last 20, 30 years. He was accountable for everything that he did, and he did it with purpose. That's it,
Wow.
man. That's a
Listen,
catch all because I mean, I got so many things that I want a building named after me, a farm. I want all that stuff, a street somewhere. But I'm accountable, and I did everything with integrity, man.
yeah. Well, hey, I mean, I have, I'm just floored, and this has been such a powerful conversation. And you start to kind of hit at some things, but can you share with the listeners, like, what's next for you, and where can people go to find you and learn more?
Well, I have a few different platforms. So Facebook will be ATeam Fitness LLC, and that shows some of my events that I put on for the community as far as the fitness goes. On Instagram, it would be A Team 5 Fitness, A Team 5 Fitness with the number five, and then also, but like I said, it's a different platforms that I have. Legacy Health Education on Instagram, and that's for the CPR classes that I teach. That's the splinting classes, the stop the bleed classes. We do events in the community with that too. Araya's Mobile Notary on Instagram, my notary. And also, we have a bike club, man. So if people want to get out and get on the bikes, Alpha Rider. So I think that's Alpha underscore RYDAZ. And that's, we put together a bunch of stuff. And that's like people of color just getting on bikes and getting rolling through the Bay Area. And we do link up with other people outside the state. And, my website is ateamfitness.org. And that again has apparel and events posted and things like that. What's next for me? Once I finish this fire academy, I'll be an Oakland firefighter, man, serving the city of Oakland,
Okay.
doing my thing. and working on some stuff I got to keep top secret as far as the business goes. But it'll be something I'm gonna bring you in on, man. You're gonna have a good time because I see you out there doing your yoga and handstands and all kind of stuff. You pretty strong, dude. I've seen it.
Yo,
But yeah, man, that's pretty much it. I'm just keep on trucking.
man. Well, Paul, we're gonna stay tuned. We're gonna stay tuned and
Yeah, for sure.
get our glasses ready, get our popcorn ready for the show
Oh yeah,
because
baby.
it's beautiful to see. And I appreciate your openness, your transparency, the powerful testimony that you shared of your journey, especially like these last few years. And I feel like this is a powerful conversation. I know folks left this conversation with so much insight and inspiration, and seeing you walking in your purpose, all of the amazing things that you're creating, the inspiration that you're just generating out there. I feel grateful to be in your community. So man, just keep doing what you're doing because, like I said, it's resonating with me. I know it's resonating with a lot of folks out there.
I appreciate it, man. It's only up from here, brother.
That's right. That's right. So, folks, as we get to wrap this up, Paul has hit on it. When it comes to the inevitability of change, it is something that you have to work with. When it comes to those areas of change that we want to create in our life, we can't look for the answer. We can't look for the push on the outside. It comes to ourselves being accountable. We can't swim around making those changes in our lives because whether we're swimming in the fear, whether we're swimming in the distractions, unresolved trauma, there is a risk if we don't change, especially when it comes to us living a life that we're passionate about and to the fullest expression of our capabilities. And psychologist Dr. Abraham Maslow, who coined the hierarchy of needs, which we've learned about in our Restoring the King journey, once said about that route to self actualization, that self expressing yourself to the fullest, once said that if you deliberately plan on being less than anything that you're capable of being, I warn you that you'll be unhappy for the rest of your life.
Mm,
When it comes to change, we cannot settle. And so I know that you took so much from Paul's story, from his journey, and how you can use seasons of change to really catapult you to the next level if you allow it, if you're willing to open yourself out, ask for help, lean on your community, and do the work that is necessary to give birth to the new and evolved you. And there's no going back and there's no telling what you could become as a result of it. But you just gotta be willing to go on that journey of uncertainty in the process. So, folks, that is it for today's show. I would like to thank you for your presence and tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, or wherever, leaving us a review on iTunes, reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.